Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We're here to give kind of our comprehensive thoughts in this podcast on this 2026 team because now with the talent acquisition calendar this year, you get one portal window, the winter window. It's essentially closed. Basically, this is going to be Miami's roster in 2026. Miami's not going to be able to bring in a ton of guys after the month of spring football. And so this is what you got at Miami. This is what everyone around the country has at this point. So we want to just share our quick takeaways. And again, we'll learn more about this roster as players develop during the spring and summer and fall camp months. But just like on paper right now, we want to provide our thoughts on what we like, what we have our eye on as well with each position group. So we'll dive into that. Should be fun. Before we do that, I want to highlight a couple of our sponsors. Canes Connection, that of course is Miami's collective. Miami signed a top 5 portal class this cycle, got their guy at quarterback, really landed some big time weapons on offense, bolstered the defensive line, really addressed the main areas that needed to be addressed. Top 5 class, talent acquisition never stops, and Canes Connection helps it keep rolling downhill for Miami and Mario Cristobal. So go support those guys any way you can. It's the best way to support the program, especially at a grassroots level at canesconnection.com. Also want to highlight our guy, Nick Musarino at Musarino Law. If you've been injured in any type of accident, whether it's a car accident, trucking accident, slip and fall accident, Uber accident, Lyft accident, Nick Musarino is the personal injury attorney you should contact at 561-960-9870 or visit his website at flinjury.law.
Yeah, guys, and if you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in South Florida real estate, you should know Aaron Pascal with Keller Williams. He's a local born and raised, huge Miami fan, knows Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, backwards, inside and out. You can get a free home value report or a quick market update. Get real numbers from my guy Aaron at 305-497-5773 or visit his site at apascal.kw.com.
All right, so let's dive into things, Gabby, here with this roster, and let's start at quarterback. Most important position in sports, especially in football. And look, as we all know by now, Darian Mensah is going to be Miami's starting quarterback in 2026. Gabby, you were there when he, got the all clear, like everything's good to go at Miami, and as he was being welcomed into the building. Take us through like that scene, how it all looked, your just, initial impression on the body type of Darian Mensah, how he carried himself, etc. As you took that all in, what did you notice?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, everybody was excited about Darian Mensah arriving on campus. I think that there's just a sense that like this is someone that's gonna just kind of lead the program and be a good fit in what Miami wants to do on offense. Of course, with how successful he was at Duke and everything that he was able to do statistically and just on tape over there. But the scene was really cool. His wide receiver, we'll get into him later, Cooper Barkate arrives first. And so they kind of start setting the scene outside, everyone welcoming Cooper, and then Darian Mensah pulls up, again, it was just a really exciting moment to see both those guys together. Of course, teammates at Duke arrive at Miami together, and Darian Mensah just physically, right? Like, I'm sure not many people have seen him like in person, but he's probably a little bit like thicker than I thought. Like I think what's he listed at 6'3",
I think
205.
205 is what he was listed
Yeah,
at
I mean,
last
I
year.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's closer to maybe 210, 215. I don't know. This is just me eyeballing him. He had a hoodie on, but he definitely looked like a quarterback with some mass and some size to him. Just in general, bigger than I thought he would be. So yeah, I mean, it was really cool. They got straight into the golf cart as he arrived on campus, and then they went on a campus tour with Mike Rumpf, and then they had lunch at the Rat on campus. And feedback I got after that kind of lunch was that, everyone around the program that was kind of a part of it was kind of all in on, this idea and this concept, and they came away feeling like Darian Mensah and Cooper Barkate were both great kids, and they would be
Hmm.
great fits within the program.
Yeah, big time addition. And look, I think it's pretty obvious listening to a recent podcast. You and I both think this is a massive haul. And one thing I find interesting, Gabby, and I think it's something to maybe be excited about. This Mensa acquisition is the first time if you include this cycle, the last three cycles, where there is like kind of a national consensus of like, oh wow, okay, Miami got a big time quarterback. Because if you remember, right, 2 years ago, Cam Ward, there was some concerns about like from Washington State. There was some concerns about his ability to be a leader, which seems crazy,
Yeah, it
wild,
seems
right,
wild in
in
hindsight.
retrospect, that was kind of coming out of Washington State. But that was the vibe coming out of Washington State. And there was also just concerns of like in general, like okay, if you're a big time quarterback, why did you go 5-7 at Washington State in the Pac-12? So there was some hesitancy, I think, with Cam Ward nationally, in terms of like, okay, did Miami really land a big time quarterback? How's this gonna go? Is Cam Ward worth the drama, quote unquote, of entering his name in the draft, pulling it out, prolonging things, etc. And of course, that worked out spectacularly because just a super talented quarterback plugged him into Miami, and it was full go. And then Carson Beck last year, right? He was a very divisive player. I think even like between you and me, Gabby, like and I think you ask 100 Canes fans about Carson Beck when it was the day it was announced that he was coming to Miami. It was pretty 50-50 in terms of like, okay, let's go. This is a nice addition. And the other 50 was kind of like, I don't know. It wasn't all that impressive at Georgia. And there was there were some questions like which Carson Beck is Miami getting, the 2023 version of Carson Beck or the 2024 version. I think again there was some questions about his leadership, which got squashed again at Miami. He was a good leader for that 2025 team. There was also questions about the injury, right? Like how's he going to recover from the off-season elbow surgery, which was my biggest concern as it related to Carson Beck, and everything was good there for the most part, and just in general too. Like how's he going to do with filling Cam Ward's shoes? He had to be the guy who followed the guy, and that's sometimes not easy. But Carson Beck handled that situation as well. And again, you circle back to Mensa, and it's like there's just a consensus of like, okay, wow, this guy's legit. Miami got a big time player. His trajectory of development and improvement is impressive. There's probably still more meat on the bone in terms of how much more he can improve at Miami. He's a good leader. There's just a kind of consensus like, okay, he's going to go ball out at Miami. And so, in general, just like what excites you about his ability? Because, I've kind of said, like, to me, he's like on the scale of like, is he Cam Ward? Is he Carson Beck? To me, he's like closer to Cam Ward than Carson Beck stylistically and how he plays, and I think what he's going to bring to this offense. Um, but what excites you about him as a player, just the more you watch him?
Yeah, I think with Darian, to me, I just think I'm just so excited about just what this offense is going to look like with him, and then with just in general with everything around him. I mean, the talent that he has to just be able to distribute the ball, to extend plays, to drive the ball downfield. I think that's probably one of the elements, like, and we've talked about this, is one of the elements of Miami's offense that just wasn't really there too much throughout the 2025 season, was that vertical downfield passing game. Darian Mensah chucks it down the field. He wants to push it down the field, and I think I think his willingness and desire to drive it down the field, I think opens up Miami's offense, because we know that they can do a lot of things underneath, right? With Malachi Tony in the slot, and then you kind of implement a vertical passing game and an explosive passing game. I think that. I think that it's just going to be so much fun to watch him. And then I feel like he's just kind of a clean player, just like as far as just like everything underneath and kind of hitting his layups. I feel like he does a good job of kind of hitting
Yep.
his layups too, which I think is important. And you hear Shannon Dawson over throughout the years, we've heard Shannon Dawson talking about the importance of hitting the layups. And I think Darian Mensah does a good job with that too. So I think he's going to be really efficient. Look, I don't know if he's going to throw for 3,900 yards this year. Like I don't know if I'm like I would project that. But I think he's going to be
I
really good,
would.
man. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see what the numbers end up looking like. But I think it's going to be an awesome offense with Darian, and I think it's going to be a really good fit.
Yeah, like you said, he pushes the ball downfield. He's really good at getting the ball out quick when he needs to do that. He's also just a very good processor. Like one thing just, when we were first watching Cam Ward, one of the most obvious things that's like, okay, this guy's different is he would go through his progressions, and as soon as he saw like his second or third progression was open, bang, the ball out was so quick with accuracy, decisive, good throwing power as well on those throws. So I think Mensa brings some of that as well. Um, I think the bottom line is like this is going to work in a big way. I
Yeah,
think
it
like,
is.
Cam Ward, we had to see if he could make that jump to Miami. Like how real is it? It was amazing. Carson Beck, okay, can he get it? Can he get the mojo back? Can he lead this team? Things look different offensively with Carson Beck's offense, but it worked in a big way, right? Um, so let's talk about the backups now because, it's interesting to discuss like I think the goal for every program, right, is to not have to go to the portal for a quarterback. Now, I have made it clear, like, I'm a fan of that strategy. I think it's the way to go because you can't really mess up that position. If you mess up that position, your season can be capped in a big way.
Right.
But Miami at backup, right? Emory Williams, as we mentioned, goes on to ECU. So wish him the best of luck there. And, I'm sure he'll be a productive starter at ECU. It's time for him to go be a starter. So the backups this year will be Luke Nickel, who Miami retained, right? I think Miami had to do some work to retain him. Judd Anderson also returns. The big bodied, kind of traitsy quarterback who still has to like clean some things up, but has some traits that are intriguing. And then Darian Coleman, who, again, different type of traits from Judd Anderson, but has intriguing traits as well in terms of like a quick trigger, quick processor. His question is always going to be like size and can he be a guy that drives the ball downfield at the college level, like you need a quarterback to be able to do? So, just a general, Gabby, like what do you want to see from this group? Because, like to me, it's just different things from different quarterbacks. Like, I think like Luke Nickel, like to me, like the mobility and just the general, just like strength of like being in a college program for a full year now. Are we going to see a little more of a live arm with the strength program and also just the mechanical work he's been doing to clean up during his time at Miami, just getting things more efficient that way. Anderson, like I said, like he's raw still, but like the processing and accuracy to me still needs to be cleaned up with him. And then Coleman, he's a early enrollee freshman, so like he's just trying to keep his head above water. During this time. But you do want to see flashes of like, okay, Coleman's a smaller quarterback, but he's got juice in his arm. Like
Mhm.
if he stays the course, he's got a chance to be a starter here. But in general, like what do you want to see from the backups here in the month of spring football?
Yeah, I think I really want to. I want to see Luke Nickel kind of take that next step. I want to see what it looks like for him in year two. He's gotten bigger, right? Like he looks like a
Yeah.
thicker, like he's got a good base. I think he's gotten taller too. Like he physically has grown and looks like sturdy and all that stuff. I just want to see it all kind of start to click for Luke Nickel. I think it's important to have a good quality backup, and
Yeah.
I think I'm curious if Luke Nickel can be that. And Look, I mean, this is probably fast forwarding a little bit. I think we'll get to see Luke Nickel this year, just considering, just like I think, there'll be opportunities for Miami to potentially be up big against FCS or lower G5 programs or group of six programs. And so I'm curious to see what it looks like. But this spring, I really just want to see how Luke Nickel just reacts to kind of being in truly an elevated role. He's not a starter, but he is probably going to be the primary backup. I want to see him kind of secure that. With Judd, I just want to see again if those traits are all kind of starting to click for him, if it starts coming together a little bit more. And with Darian, for me, David, and I don't know how you feel about this. For me, it's just it's just like the body for Darian Coleman. For me, this spring and this season in general just needs to be a get bigger, a get stronger season for Darian Coleman. I am curious to see what the arm looks like, and in this type of setting, I know
Right.
he can whip it around a little bit. But to me, he's just a little bit just too lean right now for me to really kind of be all in, just because we know how physical this
Yeah.
game is and how long these seasons are and how you're gonna get hit sometimes. And I think for Darian Coleman, I think that it's just about how is this frame developing? Is he adding the weight? Is he adding the mass? If Darian Coleman can get up to like the 190-pound range, like I might be all in. But I think until he kind of starts getting into that spot where we feel like it's trending towards his body developing and growing that way, to me, it's just I'm just in a big like kind of holding pattern with Darian
Yeah.
Coleman until we see him grow.
Right, right, right. No, long term, he has a ways to go. But like this spring, I want to see some juice. I want to see the arm
Yeah,
flash a little bit and be like, okay, it's in him. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
yeah,
I think it is. I think he has arm talent.
he does
Um,
have arm talent. But
yeah.
like I'm talking about like if he has to drive the ball 15 yards and really fit it in a window,
Hmm.
can he do it at this level?
Yeah.
That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. We'll see.
The body stuff I think will come over time in time. Like can he be Kevin Jennings? We've said this
That's right.
on the podcast. I think so in time. It's not going to
Mhm.
happen in 1 year probably. It's probably going to take 2 years. But just the ability to fit the ball where he needs to with some juice. I'm curious if that flashes in the spring a little bit. Uh, okay, this is going to sound negative. I don't know. I think it's just worth saying though. Like to me, the starting quarterback is upgraded year over year. To me, the backup quarterback is just a question mark. Like I think
Right.
it's fair to say like Emory Williams, was probably not even probably was a better backup quarterback, more stable backup quarterback. You knew what you had, which is essentially what you want in a backup quarterback, a guy you
Right.
can trust to manage a game. Hopefully not for a long-term situation, but for, 2 or 3 games if that's what it's got to be till your starter comes back. That's my read of it. And look, Emery needed to go be a starter. So, but like that's kind of how I feel about the room in general. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I think starter. I think there's more upside, way more. I think there's way more NFL upside, playmaking upside. Um, and then yeah, with Luke, I think Luke can be
Yeah,
a
he's got
better
to go
backup,
show it.
but we just
Yeah.
got to figure it out. We need to go see it.
All right, running back. Oh, sorry. Before we do that, before we go on to running back at each position group, I just want to ask the question like, is this to you a college football playoff level group?
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. Is this a national championship level group?
Yeah, I think so. Starter wise, yeah.
I think so too. Right. I mean, if injuries happen at any program around the
Right.
country, that kind of derails a championship. But yes, I think it is too. Running back, you know, you and I both, I think, can't believe how they retained everybody
Hmm.
that played, some sort of significant role during the course of that 2025 season. Mark Fletcher, the lead dog of the group, of course, and frankly, he's going to be one of the most important leaders on the team. And he took a massive step forward in the playoffs, Gabby, and because of that, I honestly wonder, like, is there still more meat on the bone on that upward trajectory of
Hmm.
like, okay, he can still like hit maybe another level of production over the course of a season that we saw flashes of in the college football playoff run against, some of the better defenses in the country, right? He showed the ability to be explosive in the CFP against good teams. And one crazy stat, Gabby, when I was preparing for the podcast, Fletcher in the playoffs, so 4 games, right? Fletcher had 9 runs of at least 15 yards. In the regular season, which I think did he play all 12 games? I don't know.
I don't think so.
He
I
played
think he missed a
10 or
couple.
11.
Yeah. Or he was limited in some games.
He had 8 runs of 15 yards.
Wow.
So he had more explosive runs against better defenses in a smaller sample size. So, you and I both agree like Mark Fletcher is going to be the guy this season. He's earned it, produced, etc. To me, where I want to take this conversation is just, the backup, like basically RB2. And I know there's going to be a rotation and all that, but I really don't want to like take the cop out of that. Like that's obvious. They're going to try and rotate as many of these guys, but I think there's still going to be a clear-cut RB2, whoever it is. And so I want to ask you the question where, if you were predicting who's going to be RB2, because you could make a case for either one, a Gerard
Yeah.
Pringle, Shamar Brown, or Jordan Lyle, where are you going?
I think I'm going with Gerard Pringle. I loved what we saw from him in flashes throughout the season. You just when he kind of got that elevated, really all of November. If you look at his November, like it was impressive.
Hmm.
I mean, he had like over, I think it was close to like 300 something yards rushing or something like that. He was extremely impressive during that stretch when Miami kind of started to lean on him. And I just think just when you look at the way the schedule lays out. I think like Gerard Pringle is just like the perfect complement to Mark
Hmm.
Fletcher because I still feel like when you get into some of those big physical games like the Notre Dame game, I think that that's a Mark Fletcher, maybe Marty Brown type
Yeah,
of situation. But I think when you're playing against Wake Forest and you're playing Stanford and you're playing all these different schools, like Gerard Pringle could be an absolute weapon against those types of teams. Like you see running backs that are stylistically similar to Gerard Pringle who have a ton of success in just within the context of playing against those styles of defenses and teams and so I think Gerard Pringle is going to have a great year and I think he's going to be an awesome complement to Mark Fletcher. The SEC came calling hard.
yeah,
He could have left to an Alabama or an Auburn, potentially a Georgia, and he decided to stay. And I think there's going to be a great role for him. I'm curious to see how his body continues to grow and develop over this next year too. Like he's still got a bunch of time before the season kicks off, and I think he added pretty good mass going into the 2025 season compared to when he first got to Miami. And if he can continue to just get stronger, a little bit more sturdier, and tidy up the pass pro stuff, which he's a smaller guy,
right.
he may not ever be great at that, but if he can just be better,
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a great relief option to Mark Fletcher with a ton of explosive potential. I think he has great vision, and so I'm going to be excited about. I have high expectations for Gerard Pringle in an RB2 type of role.
And I like too, which I think you're hinting at, just he's different. He's a different style of back from Mark Fletcher, right?
Yeah.
The cliche thunder and lightning. I
Hmm.
think you get that with Fletcher and Pringle. And also too, like, and I agree with you, like I think Pringle's gonna be the guy as RB2. But I think too, like he's just a dog and
Hmm.
he's gonna go take that job.
Yeah.
Now I will say, like, I think Marty, he's the type of guy that you maybe take for granted
Hmm.
because he's just kind of your steady Eddie. Like, okay, you know what you're going to get with Marty Brown. He doesn't really make mistakes. He's physical. He can be a hammer late in games, and there's definitely value to that. And as it relates to Jordan Lyle, man, I'll admit, like, I am impressed and encouraged that he came back. To
Yeah.
me, that kind of says, like, okay, he's got that dog in him where he's like, okay, I'm not going in, I'm not running from this. I'm gonna go get this job myself. So, and look, in terms of like physical talent, you could argue Jordan Lyle is the
Yeah.
best one in the
For sure.
room. So to me, it's just like, getting the like with Jordan, getting the confidence back, getting the vision back, playing fast, if that makes sense. So if he starts doing that, I mean, he could definitely be RB2 as well. So it's a big time group. Is this a college football playoff level group to you, Gabby?
Yeah.
I would
Yes to
agree.
both.
National championship,
Yeah.
I would agree with that too. I would bet like it's one of the better, like if you're talking like top four running, like who in the
Yeah.
country has better top four running backs? Like
Nobody. I don't know. I would have to really scan
Miami's
it
going to
out.
be in the mix of
Yeah.
those, groups.
Right.
Like
And I think
Texas
I
went
think even
out and
Mark.
added
Right.
crazy talent,
Hmm.
but
They also
but
lost a bunch of guys too.
yeah, they did. They did.
They like basically gutted their running back. Who they take? They took the Raleek Brown and they took and Hollywood
Hollywood.
Smothers.
Yeah.
I'll take Miami's room over that. And that's the thing. And Mark Fletcher, I think, kind of cemented himself too as one of like the top national names as far as just like returning running backs too. So it's not even like, oh, it's just good because it's deep. It's like, no, Mark Fletcher was like awesome in the college football
Yeah.
playoff. And he's complemented by a really good stable of backs. And so, yeah, I think
And
I
those
think it's going to be
backs too, like we're going to get into it, but the passing game is going to be more of a threat,
yeah,
and it's going to be easier to run the ball for those
right.
guys. So, I think on a per carry basis, you're going to see a lot more explosiveness from the run game because, defenses are going to have to try and contain this explosive passing attack, which let's move on to wide
Yeah.
receiver, right? And look, again, we talk about this running back room being one of the best in the country. I think this receiver room also one of the best in the country. They of course returned Malachi Tony, most productive true freshman in the country out of the slot. He was also like the most productive receiver in the country on screen, specific screen plays. He led the country in that, so you have an elite player there. Malachi can also go downfield and make plays downfield. We saw him do that early in the season in particular. And so I'm curious to see, working with Darian Mensah, if that continues to just unlock more for him in his game. Miami also added Cooper Barkate, transfer from Duke, Mensah's go-to guy. He was top 10 in, top five in production in the country in the intermediate passing game. So when balls traveled between 10 and 19 yards per game, that's where Cooper Barkate really does his damage. And one interesting stat I saw, Gabby, when I was preparing, Malachi Tony converted the most third downs in the country amongst all the receivers in the country.
Wow.
And Cooper Barkate converted the third most first downs, or sorry, first downs in the country amongst all the receivers. Jeremiah Smith was second. So that's a big time 1-2 punch Miami has there. That's a big starting point. If you can convert first downs at receiver with regularity, your offense is going to be putting together a lot of productive drives. Miami also added Vandrevius Jacobs, nice deep threat. Cam Vaughn, kind of a nice, well-rounded type of receiver that can go make contested catches. Retain Josh Moore, which I think is sneaky big. And, added a talented freshman class. Also, Dalen Upshaw, guy to develop, etc. And look, again, we all know like Malachi and Cooper, they're going to be good, right? They're both going to be guys who push for 1,000 yards, I think, each in this offense. To me, the interesting talking point is who's going to be the third receiver, and where would you go with that?
I'm going with Josh Moore. I think that, I think it's like you mentioned about Jordan Lyle. I think it speaks a lot to Josh Moore that he stayed for this. Miami brought in two outside wide receivers at that point, and I think it was pretty obvious to everyone that they were also bringing in Cooper Barkate, and Josh Moore didn't run from that. He stayed after, he played in almost every single game Miami played in the season. He played in the national championship, caught a pass in the national championship game. And I just think that there's just so much upside with Josh Moore. And I think this offseason is going to be massive for
Let me
him. I
ask you
think they,
this.
yeah,
Do you think he's like on schedule? Because I like when Josh
yeah.
Moore signed with
hmm
Miami, what did we expect of him?
Right. I think we felt like he was kind of raw, right? Like I think that he was kind of raw, like kind of just again kind of an
He might
upside
be
wide
ahead
receiver.
of what I thought, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like,
think there was a lot of work. There was a lot of work that needed to kind of. That, I think we knew he was talented. I don't know.
right.
I wouldn't have projected him to play in 15, 16 games this year or whatever the case is. And look, he showed flashes in that USF game that he could be a downfield playmaker type, right? And I think that that's kind of the next gear for him is proving that he can be that more consistently. And I think you put Josh Moore in an offense that's going to focus on pushing the ball downfield and giving him kind of other options in Malachi Tony, who's going to generate a lot of attention, and Cooper Barkett, who's going to generate a lot of attention. You're putting Josh Moore in some pretty successful situations or some favorable situations, and I think that he's going to have great opportunities to make plays and be another dynamic threat on the outside. He's going to have to compete with Cam Vaughn. I think that's going to make him better. Just kind of continue to refine him and push him in that role. I think Cam Vaughn's another just solid, steady presence. I think Vandrevius Jacobs the same, and you can go as deep as Dalen Upshaw. There's a lot of Milan Paris buzz. People are excited about Samari and Wingo, and all this room is really, really talented. But if I were projecting wide receiver 3 right now, I think Josh Moore has the biggest potential to emerge as
Yeah.
a really like a difference maker in that type of role.
Yes, I think it would be best for Miami's offense if Josh Moore won the job because of the upside and potential and what he could bring in that role, like you're saying. And yeah, he really did. He played quite a bit as a true freshman. He played 264 offensive snaps. That's not a small number for a true freshman wide receiver. He finished with 210 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, that's as a true freshman wide receiver for a team that made a run at a national championship, and he was probably what, the fifth receiver on this team,
Hmm.
fourth receiver maybe. Um, and look, Gabby, this requires a lot of filtering, and you can take this stat with a grain of salt, but like if you only looked at power four level wide receivers, true freshman wide receivers. So not redshirt freshmen, true freshman wide receivers. He was the 16th most productive true freshman wide receiver at the power four level. And that includes like a guy like Florida's Dallas Wilson, for example, right? Like he's a very talented player and he's going to be really good this year. Um, and Florida had to pay up to retain a guy like that. Josh Moore was more productive than a guy like Dallas Wilson. So I think, you know, I think it's in him to be a big time wide receiver. And honestly, he's the guy I would project to go be the third guy in this wide receiver group. Now, I will say, like, I also do like the idea of Vandrevius Jacobs as a deep threat. And, Cam Vaughn, like you're saying, kind of represents that floor of like, okay, if Josh Moore just isn't really ready to take it yet, you have the veteran guy in Cam Vaughn who, you know, you know what you're going to get with him. And we've seen like Miami definitely values that as they should because you need to be dependable to be on the field. So I think Josh Moore, though, like I think the mentality's there. I think the physical traits are there. I think bigger guys in general take longer to develop at every position, and he's a big dude. And if he does go out and win this job, again, I don't know if there is a better starting three in the country than potentially Josh Moore, everything clicking, Cooper Barkate, and Malachi Tony working out of the slot. So the potential's there. And again, college football playoff level position group, to me, yes.
Definitely. Definitely.
National championship level group, to me,
Definitely.
yes.
Yeah.
Especially if Josh Moore, you know, fix, clicks. If
Yeah.
everything comes together for Josh Moore, because really, I do think you need three receivers to go win a Natty. Um, you know, you can't be limited, with two receivers at that level of competition.
Mhm.
So Miami definitely needs Josh Moore or Cam Vaughn, etc. Someone's got to go take that third receiver job.
Dave, I have a quick question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. I tried to look for it, and I don't really know how to find this, like how to be specific. So I asked ChatGPT, and whatever
Okay.
ChatGPT said,
Uh-oh.
it said that there was
I'm
no
in trouble.
comparable results. No, no, there's nothing. But I mean, even if there's not there's probably not an answer. There's no way to like know off the top of our heads. But like an offense that returns, right, that like inherits at
Yeah.
least a 3,500 yard passer, essentially a 1,200 yard rusher in Mark Fletcher. He was 8 yards away from 1,200 yards,
Right.
and 2,000 yard wide receivers, really over 1,100 yard wide receivers.
Right.
Like, is there an offense that started the season walking in with like that level of returning production? Like it's to me, it's like
It's a fair question.
I don't know. There and that's I'm setting the bar lower for Mensa. Like you can go 3,800 yards passing with
Right.
a 1,200-yard rusher. Like the level of production that Miami's returning on offense, like the proven have done it, and not to mention the production of even a Vandrevius Jacobs, a Cam Vaughn, and a Josh Moore who again played and all that stuff. Plus the backup running backs and what they've done either throughout their careers or this past season. Like the skill position the skill guys with the quarterback in this offense, like, we'll get into the offensive line, and I know that there's question marks there, but like this seems like a pretty unique group of like talent and weapons that Darian Mensah has to work with when you kind of piece this whole puzzle together. It seems to me unique not only to Miami, but really just to like the college football landscape as a whole. Like there's a lot of guys who have played a lot of really good football on this offense, and it's going to be. I'm like truly stoked to watch to see it and see what this is going to look like.
The easy compare and the conversation and comparison, and I think it's a fine comparison conversation to have is this group going to be better than 2024?
Yeah.
And I don't know yet. Like I can convince myself yes, and then I can check myself and be like, well, Cam Ward was the number one overall pick. Is Darian
Right.
Mensah going to be that? Elijah Arroyo was a problem at tight end
Hmm.
for defenses. Miami, this group doesn't have that. But I do think the receiver group has a little more juice than that group. But like Xavier Restrepo was a stud too. Like
Yeah.
now, I think if Josh Moore takes that step, maybe personally I'd lean towards this group. But I'm going to be responsible for now and not convince myself of crazy things this offseason. And we'll see how it looks, but no doubt there's a lot of juice in this skill group. Let's go to tight end because that's a group that look still looking for a position coach with Cody Woodiall moving on to Ole Miss. Miami returns Elijah Lofton. Miami is hoping Luka Gilbert takes the next step to kind of be that second tight end. And look, Gabby, for me, and this kind of ties into the conversation at receiver. I just want to know like what this group is, and I want to know like if this group can step up and you know hold their own in terms of like, okay, do you deserve to be on the field, honestly? And look,
Mhm.
I'm here for like I do think tight ends are important, and I understand the blocking element is also important for tight end play. Um, but to me, like when you have this type of personnel at receiver, I think it's fair to have the conversation of, okay, we want to have tight ends on the field, but do we want to do that at the expense of making an offense less explosive or less dangerous, less effective? And to me, like Lofton just has to be better year over year.
Mhm.
Luka Gilbert has to take a step forward. I'm excited about Luka, but he's got to take a step forward. Is his time going to be this year or is his time going to be next year? I think that's just something that has to be figured out. And so to me, like what I hope, like if this tight end group isn't quite like, doing its part, I would like to see them put more receivers on the field with the guys they have at receiver. Will they do that? Probably not. But that's just how I kind of, maybe this is unfair, but like, look, and the way I think about it too, Gabby, if you're let's say you're the defensive coordinator, would you rather face a Miami offense that has Malachi Cooper, Josh Moore, and Elijah Lofton on the field, or Malachi Cooper, Josh Moore, and Vandrevius Jacobs on the field together?
Right. No, of course.
So that's just where I'm at. Now, look, Elijah Lofton could take a step forward, and okay, Miami has a threat at tight end. But if that doesn't happen, man, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with the tight end group.
I think it's a fair conversation to have, but I think, as we know, the reality of that is that
Yeah,
they're going to play. They're going to play. Probably going to play tight ends just because they value the
right.
physicality, and also I think this is going to be a pretty new look offensive line, and I think they're probably going to give them a little bit extra
Yeah,
support with the tight ends, especially like a Luka Gilbert type. big body who can kind of help on the outside of a or attach on a tackle or whatever the case is. So I would expect the tight end room to be involved, and that's why I'm hopeful that Luka Gilbert comes along because I think that that's something that he could provide that I think could just help this offense just be better from a blocking standpoint and from a run blocking, all of it. Um, and then he also, I believe, from what I've gathered, has some juice as a pass catcher too. But yeah, like you said, he has to take a big next step. And I think he's one of the guys I'm gonna be really curious about going into spring. Just what does it look like for Luka Gilbert? Because I think he can have a pretty expansive role if. And that's the hard thing it's hard to judge Elijah Lofton too, right? Because we heard about him all spring as this standout, and then you heard about him all fall camp as this standout. And then it kind of gets to the season, and it's like we didn't really get that until like the back half of the season where he kind of started to make an impact in the passing game. So I think it's tough to judge just where this tight end room truly is, just because I feel like there was a I don't know, to me there was kind of like a detachment from the expectation versus the reality of what Elijah Lofton was going to be in 2025. Not from you, David. You clocked it. I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about in general. Definitely for me,
Yeah.
because I think the expectation was he was going to be awesome. Like I had people telling me he was going to catch 40, 50 passes this year. That it just didn't work out that way. So I am curious to see just what the tight end usage and what that look is now in 2025. But I think the guy I'm maybe most curious about is Luka Gilbert.
Yeah. And look, again, I understand tight end is a position that does more than just catch passes. But like I guess the conversation I would want to have is like you look at last year's snap counts, Alex Bauman played 699 offensive
Ooh.
snaps. That was seventh most on the team. Elijah Lofton played 451 offensive snaps, and he missed a game and missed a large part of the Fiesta Bowl with an injury. So he would have been 500 plus. I'm just curious, like, if this group doesn't necessarily take a step forward, do you need two tight ends to play 500 plus snaps? That's where I'm at. Like,
Yeah, that's fair.
should that number be closer to 300 to 500 for those?
Hmm.
But again, if they take a step forward, great, let's roll, right? Because again, the balance and tight ends are important in that regard. Is this college football playoff level position group to you?
I don't know if it is. I probably wouldn't have said last year's one was either, but I don't know.
Right, that's the thing. Like, I
Maybe it's
probably,
college football playoff level,
right,
maybe not national championship level.
right, because like, how many teams really care about tight ends?
Yeah,
So I would say yes, but national championship level, like, no. But like,
might not
again,
matter.
how important is it?
Right,
Like,
might not matter.
offensive line. And look, this is one of the more interesting position groups, probably the most on the team,
Hmm.
I think. Uh, Offensive and defensive line probably will be this offseason. But on the offensive line, Miami returns Matthew McCoy, Samson Okunlola. The rest are going to be either new guys or guys just in bigger roles, as they step up and look to fill the guys who departed on to pursue professional careers. So that includes like Ryan Rodriguez, probably start spring as your top center.
Hmm.
Jackson Cantwell, 5-star offensive tackle, probably going to get a shot, right or left side, etc. Max Buchanan, second year interior offensive lineman. Jamal Merriweather, a Georgia transfer who was a rotational guy at Georgia, kind of more so just straight up backup who didn't really play much, but at Miami, he's going to get an opportunity to earn a starting job. I think maybe Joel Irvin as a true freshman is someone to watch, once fall camp gets going here, in August. And then maybe SJ Alafatuli too. That's how I would kind of characterize this group. And look, where I'm at, Gabby, with this group, I think, I don't ever like just lazy assumption type of stuff when it comes to evaluating a team. But I think there is, rightfully so, a lot of trust here with Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal and their ability to put together a strong five and developing a group. But it is, I think it's something to watch because, obviously you need a good offensive line to make an offense go. If you were projecting the starting five, let's say just let's say for game one, let's not even say spring football, let's not
Yeah.
even say the start of fall camp. Game one, how would you project the starting five left to right?
Yeah, I'd probably go Matthew McCoy left tackle, Max Buchanan left guard, Ryan Rodriguez center, Samson Okunlola right guard, and then Jackson Cantwell right tackle.
Okay. And Matthew McCoy, what is your comfort level on a scale of 1 to 10 with him making that move from left guard to left tackle?
Um, I think probably I think I'm probably probably more optimistic than maybe most. I would probably say like a 7 out of 10.
That's where I'm at too. And I think that's fine. I did an article this week where, look, going back to Oregon, like Cristobal and Mirabal, I think it was 6 out of the 8 years when you include Oregon and Miami. They essentially start the season with a new left tackle. So this isn't something that they aren't used to doing. They had Penei Sewell in back-to-back years at Oregon. And then if you wanted to count Markel Bell or Jalen Rivers, depending on how you viewed that. Like there was an overlap year there where they both kind of handled it, and technically Markel Bell played more snaps at left tackle than Jalen Rivers that year. But anyways, that was kind of the overlap year there. Now the difference is like, and also too, like if you just judge PFF grades, which whatever, you can take it with a grain of salt. Besides like Penei Sewell, there hasn't been like super elite level left tackle play by these guys that, Mirabal and Cristobal coach. Now, Markel Bell had a good grade for his play this year. In 2024, his, grades weren't great. And I think that showed on tape too. Like Markel he had to make a big jump from 24 to 25, and he did that. So, look, I think Matthew McCoy is more of a natural tackle, honestly, than guard. You mentioned wisely in the last podcast, like he's got to reshape his body some. So he needs to do that. If he does that, I'm comfortable with him at left tackle. How comfortable are you with Cantwell at right tackle?
Yeah, I'm probably like probably like honestly maybe like a 5 or 6. Uh, I think he's gonna be honestly, I think he's gonna be fine because the standard's obviously really high, but I'm trying to think just like relative to obviously I think who Miami's going to be playing and within like the landscape of the ACC and just giving Alex Mirabal and these guys the benefit of the doubt. I think he's going to be fine by September as far as just being ready to go. And I still think he'll be one of the most talented offensive linemen, potentially in the conference or even just like on the schedule as far as just like playing against some of these opposing defensive lines. Like I still think he's going to be good. He's gonna go through his freshman lumps, but I still think I'm probably still at like a 5 or a 6 as far as just like pure confidence level that he can get it done
I do like that the schedule allows for him
to
and
settle in.
the rest of the O line to
Hmm.
settle in. Like they're
Yeah.
not starting with Notre Dame. Like last year's schedule would have been tough for a new
Hmm.
look offensive
Right.
line with, Notre Dame, Florida, USF, Florida State, Louisville in the first half of the schedule. So this group gets to settle in a little bit more. Where do you think, like, to me, my impression, Gabby is like if you're comparing him to Francis Maui Noah, who was a true freshman starting right tackle, right? I think it's fair to say Maui Noah was further along than Jackson at the same stage, like when they arrived as early enrollee freshmen. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would.
Just from like a technical standpoint, because Maui Noah was playing at IMG and he was going against some, you know, future college
Yeah.
players every
Talk
day
about
at
we
practice.
talked about practicing and like the Damon Wilsons and
Yeah,
go play and then the Reuben Baines and like they played each other in high school.
yeah.
So like just a different level of development.
So I would anticipate like there's going to be moments in the spring, I think, frankly, where Jackson like looks like a true freshman who like
Hmm.
has a long way to go.
Hmm.
But like you're saying, like I do think, you bet on the traits. The traits are off the charts. And honestly, like you could argue his traits are better than Maui Noah's,
Hmm.
I think. Um, and you bet on the mentality and the ability to just figure it out in a short period of time. So
Yeah.
I agree. I think he's going to be okay. Um, Is it going to be as clean in year one? Like Maui Noah still had some ups and downs
Right.
as a
He
true
struggled.
freshman.
He did struggle a
So
little bit.
will it be like that? Like, will it be as good as Maui Noah's freshman year, which had some struggles? Like, I don't know about that. I'm curious to see how that goes, but I think he's going to be okay. And look, you acquired him to play him right away. So
Right.
this is what's going to happen. The other one I want to ask you about is Ryan Rodriguez. Um, how comfortable are you there?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable. I don't know about pretty comfortable. I'm probably around the same like Jackson range where it's just like kind of give him some confidence, make it kind of known that he's the guy. Like, yeah, maybe he might have to compete with SJ, but I think it's fair to kind of categorize Ryan as like the guy. Like physically, he's a big dude who has size and mass and all that stuff. It's just about kind of stepping into a bigger role. And he's another one that I'm hopeful that with time and reps and all that stuff that we can get solid center play from him. Like I don't
Yeah.
know if it's going to be I don't know if I'm not saying we're not getting Matt Lee. I don't even know if we're getting
No.
like James Brockermeyer, but can he be like production wise, can he be Zach Carpenter-y in that range? Like I don't know how you'd feel about that, David, but I
My
think he
thing
could
is
be
like
decent.
I do think he's smaller. Like to me, he's the smallest one yet. Maybe he's like close to the
Yeah,
Brockermeyer
I think he's close to
size.
Brockermeyer.
Um, my biggest concern, and maybe this is unfair, is just injuries. Like
Mhm.
he kind of gets hurt quite a bit, and so I do think you got to have that number two guy ready to go. If
Yeah.
if Ryan's going to be your starter, SJ needs to figure out how to snap it, or
Hmm.
you got to start working Max Buchanan there, etc.
Yeah.
Um, how about some of these younger guys? Who excites you? Like, there's a lot of buzz with Max Buchanan, right?
Yeah.
Joel Irvin, I think everyone's excited about. Jamal Merriweather, what do you expect from him, etc.
Yeah, I think Max Buchanan might be the one that excites me the most. He's gotten big, man, and just having been exposed to Max Buchanan a lot just through like his high school recruiting because he was kind of a high profile offensive line recruit as far as just and he was just very active in all like the camp settings and all the other stuff and he's kind of a dog, man. Like he's got the right mentality. He's kind of like an alpha
He
type.
fits the alpha
He
that they like.
definitely does. He
So,
definitely is. And he's gotten bigger. I saw him when I was there for, on Darian Mensa watch. Like I saw Max Buchanan walk in and like he's gotten big. Like, I know and coming out of high school he wasn't that big, but he's gotten big and thick. I think he's grown a little bit too. Like I don't know, man. I think that there's something there. Like, I think he has the ability to develop into like a multi-year starter. He's someone that I could see being a part of this starting rotation for the years to come, and I think his best football's still ahead of him. So I'm pretty fired up about Max Buchanan. Jamal Merriweather is interesting to me, David, just because I kind of look at his body type. To me, kind of seems more tackly. He's not as like thick for me to be like, doesn't really look like a Matthew McCoy type of big or an Inez Cooper type of guy or even like a Samson Okunlola. Like I think he has more of like a tackle body, but I'm curious if they develop him into a guard, if they add a little
yeah.
bit more mass to his frame and they kind of bulk him up to kind of compete at guard. Are they gonna is he gonna be kind of like a swing lineman who we see him playing tackle and we see him playing guard and seeing where he kind of fits into this equation? Or is he gonna be like the six lineman, like Miami's kind of used six over the past 2 years? And is he gonna be more of that and see if he rotates with someone or pushes someone or so I'm curious about Jamal Merriweather. Another one that I think I'm kind of excited about is Jaden Wilkerson. He's another second-year offensive lineman that Alex Mirabal spoke really highly of, during that national championship media day about just the way that he's kind of come along kind of late in the season. And he's another big body. He's like a
Yeah.
6'6", 330-pounder. Like, does he have something to say about this either tackle competition or one of these maybe potential guard spots? Like, is he someone that could be kind of like a dark horse to compete for one of these starting jobs? And I am curious just to see what the mentality is because knowing Alex Mirabal, I feel like this is going to be an open competition. Like
Yeah.
there's
In
going to
the
be a
spring.
lot in the spring. We're going to see a lot of different bodies rotating into a lot of different spots, and I think a lot of different people are going to get a crack at this. And I think that that's kind of the way they're envisioning this. That the cream is going to rise to the top, and people are going to take these jobs, and maybe it lines up nothing like what we expect, but I think they feel hopeful about the players that they have in the room and how those guys
Mhm.
are like the trajectory of some of those guys and how they're developing.
Yeah, and Samson Okunlola just keep improving.
Right.
Take that next step, which he took a nice step forward this year. So, look, to me, like this is it's they got to replace a lot, but I think the talent level and the trust you have in Cristobal and Mirabal to develop the talent, to me, it's still a college football playoff level position group. Is this a national championship level group? I think that's to be determined. I'm not ready to say no because I do think the talent, the potential is there to be a national championship level group, but it just all has to come together. Like, who knows what Jackson Cantwell's going to look like? But if
Mhm.
it comes together for him, the answer is probably yes, right? If Ryan Rodriguez stays healthy and does what Miami centers do under Cristobal and Mirabal, then yes, this is probably national. If Matthew McCoy makes a relatively smooth transition to left tackle like we expect, yes, this is a national championship level group. So that's how I view it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely I think it's good enough to be like a college football playoff type of group, and I'm just so curious about what the ceiling is. Honestly, I'm kind of curious what the floor is too, but like
Yeah,
I am kind of I just have too many questions right now, and I'm a believer in the process. And look, I mean, I
right.
think Alex Mirabal deserves all the grace and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
patience and the time to figure this out in the world, just considering his track record. And I don't anticipate it being a problem, and it's because of the trust that I have in those guys to figure this out and get him right.
Defensive line, big shoes to fill, right? Obviously, with Bain and Mesidor moving on to the NFL level. But look, Miami, I think they found some answers in the portal. And frankly, like during this college football playoff run, you saw some of their younger depth rotational players step up and flash and show encouraging signs that they would be ready for this 2026 season. And look, I'm me personally, Gabby, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the 2026 defensive line is going to be better than the 2025 defensive line because frankly, I don't think it will be. Now, will it have more depth? Probably because it has to, I think. Um, but I do think like the 2026 defensive line is still going to be very good. Miami's 2025 defensive line was the best in the country. Am I going to expect that from the 2026 line? Probably not. Can it be top 15, top 10 in the country? I think that's on the table, which is good enough to go make a run at a national championship. But to me, Gabby, the starting point of this 2026 defensive line is on the interior. Like if we're going to talk about it, I think returning Ahmad Moten was huge. I think he can be one of the best defensive tackles in the ACC if he continues on his trajectory. Justin Scott took a huge step in 2025 and flashed some big time playmaking ability, and I think he can continue to get a lot better here going into year 3 at the college level for him. Keona Davis, I think, is a sneaky addition from the portal, and Jarquez Carter, Keyshawn Stansel provide some nice depth there too as transfers and young players. But to me, Gabby, like I'm very encouraged and excited to see what this interior defensive line looked like because I think those guys can take a step forward, the returning guys from last year, and they infused a guy like Davis into the group.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about this interior defensive line group. Ahmad Moten coming back is massive. Like people
Yeah,
were, if you follow some of those NFL draft gurus on social media,
yeah,
they were pretty enamored by his potential upside. Um, they described Justin Scott was described this way in the recruiting process, like just two dancing bears, right? Like two big
yep.
athletic guys that are well over, well, Justin Scott's, a little bit over 300 pounds. Mod Moten is probably like what, 325, and he can move and he can do a lot of different things and be disruptive. I think both those guys are going to be super problematic. They both play the run well. They can both impact the passer too, and I think just the rotation. Look, again, I saw Keona Davis when I was on the Darian Mensah watch. He looked way better than I anticipated. Listed at 6'5", 275 pounds. Wasn't really sure what it was actually going to look like, but he looks like someone that you can beef up to 290 and you're not. I don't think you're going to see much of a difference in him. He's big and he's long. I think he can give you some seriously quality snaps from the interior, or maybe even on the edge if you need kind of like a strong side edge, or you need someone that probably play the run. Like I think he brings a lot of versatility and really quality depth to that room, and I think he's going to be an addition that's going to excite Miami fans once they kind of start to see him. Jarquez Carter is, if he's your fourth defensive tackle, I think that that's a pretty good situation. Miami's fourth defensive tackle last year was Dante Simpson, and I think it's a better situation as far as just having a guy who's already played a year of college football. Having him in that role, and then Keyshawn Stansel is someone that I think has people excited too, and what his body and frame is going to look like 8 months from now. I think there's a lot of potential there for him to be someone who could either crack the rotation or just set the floor of what this defensive tackle room is. I think it's a really good room, and
Yeah.
I think that again, I think the defensive line and where like the ceiling of it, I think is determined by those guys because I think that it's going to be really difficult to move the ball and run the ball on these guys again. And I also talk about this from the scope of just looking at the schedule, and we kind of talked about like this is kind of the easiest schedule on
It's
paper that
so
Miami's had in quite some time.
I
So like
keep
I look at
doing
this,
this, be it once a day, just like,
yeah,
I
no,
keep
seriously,
rubbing my eyes, like, is
and
this
I
really the schedule?
right, and like I think all of my thoughts are from the context of just like who Miami has to play, right? It's about just getting to the
Yeah,
college football playoff, and from that scope, I just keep thinking like, who's gonna block these guys? Like which one of these teams on the schedule is going to be able to block this Miami, especially just talking specifically about these interior defensive linemen. Like, who's going to be able to block these guys? Like, I don't know how many of these teams are going to be able to block up Miami
right.
with those anchors in the middle.
And look, I think it's also fair to say like Armando Blunt can eat some snaps on the
For sure.
interior too. So
Yeah.
he is a key rotational guy on the interior as well. If we're gonna go to defensive end now, and look, Miami added Damon Wilson, arguably the top available pass rusher, pure pass rusher in the portal. So that will help replace the pass rushing juice they lose with Bain and Mesidor. I think it's also expected that Marquise Lightfoot takes another step forward in 2026. He was impactful
Mhm.
in a small role in 2025. He just needs to keep getting bigger, stronger. But you like his trajectory as well. Armando Blunt, just a pure effort guy, gets it done, wreaks havoc with his effort. Can he take a step forward? He's a younger guy too for his grade, and
Right.
you know it wouldn't be surprising if he takes a big leap because of that. I also think, man, like Hayden Lowe is an
Oof.
important guy to watch. I think if he didn't get hurt, like we'd be talking about him as the best defensive end returning this year for this team. He has the potential to be that type of defensive end that can defend the run and rush the passer. Um, and look, as I look at this defensive end group, like again, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yes, they're better than last year's group. Last year's group was very top heavy with Bain and Mesidor, but man, it worked. Like those guys never left the field. They both
Hmm.
played 800 snaps for the season,
Nuts.
and they both were elite at stopping the run and rushing the passer. They never left the field. Um, and so that's going to be hard to replace. Now, does Miami have talent, bodies to do it? Herbert Scroggins also a guy to keep an eye
Hmm.
on, right? Yes, Miami can piece it together, and these guys aren't like I'm not even insinuating like Moneyball. They're gonna Moneyball this
Yeah.
position group.
In the aggregate, they're going to replicate the.
I don't think you're right. I mean, look, I'm not even trying to say that. These guys are talented. These guys are
Yeah.
future NFL players. It's just I don't know if we're gonna see a Bain and Mesidor
Hmm.
1-2 punch in the same season like we did last year. And they were the reason why, honestly, like Miami made that run. So,
Yeah.
um, to me, it's just about like defining roles. Like, what can these guys do? What can they give you? Like Damon Wilson and Marquise Lightfoot, go get the passer, right? Hayden Lowe and Armando Blunt, be the well-rounded defensive ends that can do both. Herbert Scroggins, to me, kind of more of a pass rusher type. So, and look, this is where Corey Heatherman to me is elite. Like he is elite at identifying what the defensive players do well, putting them in roles and situations to get the most out of what they do well. But I am very excited about this group. Um, I think it's a CFP level group. I think it's a national championship level group.
Yeah, I agree on both fronts. I think that look, there's no use in comparing them to the 2025 group, right? Like again, Bane and Messidor were just special. They're unique. This was just kind of like a this was a group we'll talk about forever, right? Those two guys. But that doesn't mean, like you're saying, Dave, that this defensive end room, like they could still be really, really good and just not
Yeah,
be that, which is fine. Like I don't think the expectation or even like the standard should be that. I think that this was a uniquely special year, and those were two uniquely special players. But I still think that there's a lot of firepower
yeah,
in this
oh yeah,
defensive end room. Like Damon Wilson is a hair on fire type of pass rusher. Again, is he going to be the best run stopper? Like I think you can categorize him and Marquise Lightfoot again in that group of just like these are going to be your two like your kind of third down, go get the quarterback type of pass rushers. I'm super stoked about Hayden Lowe in
yeah,
2026. Another guy I saw that last week when I was on campus, he told me he's healthy. We kind of saw him doing some stuff during that
yeah.
like fake
Playoff,
open
yeah,
playoff window practice where we basically just stood there while Miami stood there. Um, and he was doing some stuff on the bags and like so he's moving around and he's already so he's going to go into this offseason fully healthy. I think that I don't know, to me there's just so much upside there. He has an NFL like frame. He looks all of 6'5",
they thought he was
255.
going to play this year,
Yeah, like, he
and
was.
he
He was
would
doing some
have.
stuff on
Yeah,
the end. Like they were kicking him to the end. Like they were going to find a ways to get him
yeah,
onto the field. And I think just another year older, another year of just understanding what this is supposed to look like. Just maturing and all of the different things that come with being a young player. Like taking that into year two and just kind of going all in and just fully like focusing on this and being healthy, like I think Hayden Lowe has tremendous upside, and I think it's hard to project him being like a starter or whatever it is because of what's coming back and all that stuff and what Miami's brought in. But like I think he might be the most talented player in this defensive end room, which is saying a lot because you have Damon Wilson and we've seen the flashes from Blunt and Marquise Lightfoot. But I think that there's just something different about the way that Hayden Lowe's built and what he has the potential to be. So I'm big on Hayden
hmm
Lowe and what this could potentially look like in year two. Not to mention all the other guys. And people forget Armando Blunt because he's played so much and he's been around for so long. Like he was a reclassified kid. Like
hmm
he's like age wise, he should be going into his sophomore year of college. He's going into his third year at Miami, but he's still young. We're talking about Josh Moore taking a jump going into year two. Like age wise, like life
right,
wise, this is Armando Blunt's year two.
yeah.
As far as just like where his body can continue to grow, where he could developmentally just get better. Like this is a really big offseason for him too. So I just think that there's so much potential and opportunity with this group. They've also gotten a taste. It's not like they haven't played and we're kind of wish casting or hope casting or whatever it is. Like I think that this group is talented. They've proven to be productive, and I think it could be really good. Not Ruben Bain or Keith Messidor good, but I still think that this could be
Yeah.
one of the nation's like top defensive end groups and most a group of
Best in the ACC,
right and just
easily.
disruptive, like as
Yeah.
far as just quarter generating pressure, turning pressures into sacks, all those different types of things. They could be really good.
Linebacker, lose an experienced starter in Wesley Bissaint, who moves on to pursue a professional career. He was solid in 2025. They returned middle linebacker Motore for, what is it? It's his eighth year. I should know this, but I
Man,
think it
he
is.
started in
Like,
2019, so 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25,
yeah,
eighth
so
year.
year eight.
Wow.
Um, totaled 84 tackles, three tackles for loss. Look, he's a good run stopping middle linebacker. I think he is good at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
And he got better, I think,
he
as the
did.
season went on.
He was good. Like obviously the play he made against Texas A&M where he got knocked out was huge play. But even before that, like he was good in that game with
Yeah.
containing that Texas A&M rushing attack. They returned Chase Smith, which I think is sneaky big, like just as a veteran guy that they trust and like.
6 year guy. So just two older
Two
guys.
older guys,
I think it
31 tackles
matters.
last year. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
He was
sure.
solid.
They set the tone. Um, to me, he's a guy that is versatile too. Like he can eat some snaps at weak side if you need him to. He's probably primarily like a backup middle linebacker type, or just situational in a run. Obviously, running situation, you put in both of those guys in Torrey and Smith. Return Kamal Bonner, NC State transfer last year. Didn't really get to see him much because of injuries, got banged up. But Miami's excited about him as a weak side guy. Bobby Pruitt, athletic guy, just comes down to like body type and getting his physical up to be able to handle the physicality of playing linebacker. I think freshmen like J.J. Edwards is a guy to maybe watch. I honestly think Ezekiel Marcelin gets some buzz too.
Yeah.
Like,
He made a
uh,
couple special teams plays.
right. So I don't know if he's more than that, but he definitely catches people's eye on special teams.
Yeah.
Um, look,
What about Kellen Wiley? Did you get any
yes,
buzz on
sorry,
Kellen Wiley?
forgetting Kellen Wiley. Yeah, I mean, look, physically
Yeah.
the prettiest looking linebacker in the room. Is this the time for him to start playing fast and trigger fast like you have to at the college level? We'll find out, right? But if he takes that step, that's big for this group. So
Yeah.
I would personally project it as three guys playing mostly with Torrey, Smith, and Bonner. We'll see if Pruitt works his way up into that mix. Um, but I'd put it at those three for the most part. And look, this like a CFP level position group? I would say no. Is it a national championship level group? I would say no. Um, you know, I think it's fair to say, Gabby, this is probably the least talented and lowest upside group on the team. But it was also kind of that way in
Mhm.
2025, right? But it worked because everything around the linebackers was really good, right? The
Right.
the defensive line was really good. Bain and Mesidor really helped in the run defending efforts. The nickel, Keontae Scott was excellent, right? The safeties were really good at coming up and stopping the run too. So I think if that remains the case, like everything around the linebacker group is still pretty good, this group's going to be fine. Like it's not going to be a deterrent where it's like, okay, Miami's being held back by its linebackers. But I think it's fair to recognize like this is probably, and honestly, like again, as we spoke about with tight ends, like I don't know, how much does that matter to this extent? I don't know, but I think it's the weakest spot on the team.
Yeah. I think it's also notable that this is Corey Heatherman's group, right?
Yeah.
And so they're going to be, at the very least, I think they're going to be well coached.
Yes.
Motori coming back another year, hopefully healthy. I don't think he's played back-to-back seasons in his career, so crossing our fingers that Motori stays healthy and he just is a really older guy. He's going to be
Yeah.
a grandpa in the college football landscape. But a productive guy. David, we talked about the retention and how good it was everywhere else. Is this the one spot where you're just is any part of you just like, man, I kind of wish they brought back Popo Aguirre? How do you feel
Uh,
about that loss? Would you feel any different if he was still in the room? Do you feel like that's fine and it just kind of like
I
the
think it's
floors?
fine.
Yeah, okay. And so I feel like I I'm kind of and I feel like I kind of was from the beginning. I'm kind of a Kamel Bonner guy. His NC State stuff was pretty good. Like when he
Yeah.
played in the
I just got to see it.
right. And again, I'm talking about this from the scope of just what Miami's playing. Like I think he could be a fine
Yeah.
ACC will linebacker. Like I don't think that Miami's linebacker room is going to be like some downfall that's going to be like this is the reason why Miami can't be as good as it wants to be. Like
I
I
agree.
still think it's going to be good enough within the within the scope of who Miami's competing against.
Yes.
And that's why I'm not super concerned about it. Because I think Torrey and Kamel Bonner as like your 1-2 linebackers is still probably in like the top tier of, and then Chase Smith and whoever else emerges behind him. I still think that you're probably in the top tier of the conference, and I think you're good enough everywhere else to kind of make up for whatever you don't really get at linebacker.
Yeah, and to me, like the question is, and again, this is really getting in the weeds, but this is what we do. Like you look at last year's season, right? Last season, the two teams where Miami lost, SMU and Louisville. Like it's not the reason why Miami lost those games, but those teams had personnel and coaches willing to kind of pick on the deficiencies at linebacker in spots, right? And where is Miami weak? It's in coverage, right? These guys are good downhill, run stopping linebackers, but you put them in coverage and things can get a little dicey. And I look at this 26 schedule and it's like, okay, like who's the spread type of team that has the coach and the personnel willing to really pick at that in a big way and have success? And it's like, I don't know, like maybe like Wake Forest is like
Yeah.
gonna present some issues in that regard, but
Yeah.
like
I
it's
don't know if they'll
not
have the juice.
it's not gonna beat Miami is kind
Hmm.
of what I'm getting at. But um,
Maybe
you know,
Duke with Walker Eggett.
I mean they lost their
Yeah, they
other
lost a
good
lot. Yeah,
receiver,
yeah, they lost a
like
lot. But
so
but their OC is from the SMU Rhett Lashlee tree.
right.
So like if someone's gonna schematically try to dial something up like that, like Duke is a school that kind of comes to mind.
Right, and we know like Notre Dame likes to use tight ends, and
Right.
they certainly had Motori in a blender on one of those explosives they got when they kind of made the game close. So you know, I don't think it's like an issue where it's going to derail Miami's season. But if we're keeping it real, this is one of the weaker spots on Miami's roster. But it's an experienced group where you know what you're getting from an execution standpoint. It's more so just like a physical capability standpoint where you're a little bit like concerned. All right, secondary. Gabby, somehow, as we mentioned with running back, somehow they retained their top four cornerbacks who, look, all four guys have a chance in the future at an NFL career. So
Hmm.
that's impressive. OJ Frederique, Ethan O'Connor, Xavier Lucas, and Damari Brown return. They also retained Jabori Antoine, who I think they're very encouraged about as after a freshman year in which he flashed some ability. So he'll be in the mix as well. And look, obviously it's a big deal, right? Like last year we were pounding like we love this, not love. We really like this defense because Miami went out and threw numbers at corner. And if you don't have defensive line and corners, your defense is going to be inconsistent. And we saw that play out during the season, right? Like Miami had corners, they fixed the issue, and their defense was good. So we obviously know this group is stacked and good. I'm the conversation I want to have is like, how would you rank the top two? Because it's going to be a
Yeah.
dogfight for those, and they're going to rotate, and guys,
Right.
some guys might start 4 games in the season, some guys might start 5 games. They're going to do their best to try and rotate.
Yeah. Get everyone some love.
But you personally, how would you rank the top? Because I think this is a fair conversation. I think it's a
Yeah.
fun and it depends on like the different. What do you like? Some
What are you
people.
defending against? Like I
I
think
think
it's
it's
like the
that, and
matchup
just
matchup.
stylistically, what type of corner do you like in general?
Yeah.
Like people have their different flavors that they like at corner, and
Hmm.
I don't think there's a wrong answer here to this question. But how would you rank the top two?
Yeah. I like these guys a lot. I thought we didn't see a lot of Damari Brown, but I thought what we saw from Damari Brown in 2025 was really good. Like he
I
played really
agree.
good football before he got hurt, and so I mean, if everyone's at 100% health,
Yeah.
I think Damari Brown is probably one of my guys, and
Okay.
I'm probably gonna go Xavier Lucas opposite of him, just because I think he has the most like NFL-y type of traits that with his size and his length and all that stuff. But like, I mean, I think I can make an argument for OJ and Ethan. I like Ethan. I think people give Ethan a hard time because of the national championship stuff, but
Nah. What's he
I think he
supposed to
did
do?
right, exactly. That was just those are amazing plays and but I think Ethan is super talented and I think OJ's really, really talented too. But everyone at their peak,
I agree with you.
I think it's Lucas and Damari.
That's where I would go to. Damari's biggest thing is just staying healthy,
Yeah.
and I think Lucas's biggest thing is just like he gives you the gimmies, which I think is fine.
Hmm.
He doesn't get beat deep, but like, can he like tighten up those little short
Hmm.
routes? Maybe he can't because he's just a big dude. Like he's a big corner.
Yeah.
But
My thing with Lucas, I just think there's just still so much
I
room for
agree.
him to get better. I think he's still kind of raw in a lot of
Teams didn't really
ways.
throw at him too. They
No,
really
like
don't. So
I feel like there's like another level to him that we haven't even tapped into yet. And I think he has the most upside of any of these guys. I think that I think there's a next tier to Xavier Lucas that I don't think that we've seen yet. And if he gets there, I think he has like big time ability.
Yeah. And OJ Frederic is really good. I just personally get nervous like when he faces a receiver with some juice, like
Hmm.
either top end speed or just quick accelerator. That's where I get worried with OJ. But he's solid, dependable,
Hmm.
and he's you could make the argument he's the best one, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily push back. And the biggest thing is like last year showed you need at least four corners to navigate a season that long.
Hmm.
Miami needed all four of those corners to get through the season.
Yeah. And at some
Um,
point they needed five. At one point they needed Jabari to step
yes,
up.
yeah, yeah. So Jabari's also a guy to watch. Like I think he's got some intriguing talent too. So cornerback set. It's nice to not have to worry about corner.
Hmm.
Man, spring football is going to be fun watching those corners
Oh
battle
yeah.
against these receivers.
It's going
So
to be so much fun.
um, safety nickel, right? That's where you got to keep an eye on because they got to replace some big time production
Hmm.
with Jacoby Thomas and Keontae Scott. Both guys were much better than I think anyone anticipated. Both were big time playmakers. So both those guys combined for 17 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 7 interceptions. Three of those interceptions went for touchdowns, and they both combined to force 4 fumbles. So you add all that up, Gabby, that's like over 30 drive changing and in some cases like game changing plays that those guys made. By the way, like if you're a big time safety, how are you not running to go
I
play
know.
in
In
this
the system.
defense?
Yeah.
Because Corey Heatherman gets his safeties to be playmakers. But anyways, like they returned Zechariah Poyser, who was, just rock solid. I thought he got better with his physicality as the season progressed too. They bring in Omar Thornton from Boston College, local guy who brings physicality, kind of a dog mentality to the secondary as well. They return Bryce Fitzgerald, playmaker, best playmaking player in the secondary in the country amongst true freshmen, right? What did he finish with? 6 picks?
Six interceptions.
6 picks. So,
Two in a college football playoff game.
yeah, big time playmaker. His role is only going to increase year over year. Also return Dylan Day. Also add JJ Dunnigan, who I think is a freshman they're really excited about. Um, the thing I'm curious about, Gabby, is,
And
and
Conrad
again,
Hussey.
yes, sorry, Conrad Hussey as well. From Oregon State, started his career at Florida State, St. Thomas Aquinas product. Big time talent. We'll see if it all comes together at Miami. But the thing I'm curious about, and Heatherman did a good job of managing this last year, but like my impression is you have a guy in Omar Thornton who's kind of your physicality, downhill safety, gonna bring the wood, good at stopping the run, etc. Bryce Fitzgerald is your, good in coverage. I think he's good in man coverage for a safety. He's obviously good at ball hawking as a free safety. Physicality is the thing where it's like, and it didn't like show in a
Hmm.
bad way because Miami swarms to the football so well with everyone else. But like one-on-one tackling is not a strength of his as it
Open
is.
field tackling.
Right. So, you have two safeties that have different skill sets. You could argue that was the case last year too, a
Hmm.
little bit with like Jacoby Thomas, you don't really want in coverage all that much in terms of like one-on-one coverage, but they would put him in the box at times. Keontae Scott was do it all nickel. He was excellent. So, but when Keontae went injured or got injured, Heatherman really had to manage that situation. And again, what's your strength? I'm going to put you in a position to amplify your strength. So I'm just curious, like how this nickel safety
Hmm.
rotation comes together. Like, is Bryce Fitzgerald going to be more of the nickel, or is it Omar Thornton? How would you project it at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Omar Thornton, you kind of get more of like the nickel vibes. Like I feel like just watching him, like I think he did a lot of good stuff playing up top, but he could also do a lot of great stuff in the box too. And I think just like the physicality and the coverage ability, he was a linebacker in high school. I think
So
he kind
that's
of
what
spun.
worries me, though, the coverage.
Yeah,
Like the man, if he has to be in man coverage, I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know.
yeah. I think he's a physical, hard-hitting
He
guy who's
is.
willing to stop the run, and that's why I think like I would project nickel there, and then I think he can kind of get up top depending on what the situation is. Like if you need him kind of in some of those situations, you can kind I think the expectation is that like from what I've gathered is that he's
Right.
versatile and they can move him and do different things with him. And I think that's why they like him so much. And I think and so I'm curious to see I'm super curious to see how they end up addressing the nickel spot, like if they go with one of those two guys or what the situation looks like. And with Bryce, I think man, I don't like I think people don't realize like he still hasn't gone through a full college offseason yet. He kind of hit the ground running in the summer and right out of the gate they're like this kid's a tremendous athlete and then he
Yeah,
kind
he's
of
a
just
stud.
worked his way onto the field so quickly. And so I like Bryce Fitzgerald, the physicality, of course, has always been the question, but I'm curious just like with the whole offseason of getting bigger and stronger, also just understanding what it takes because he played a lot, like how he has to understand what it takes and like what it's required out of his body and how physical these games actually are. And I think he's willing. I think it's just a matter of just like actually just being able to impact the game in that way. Because he came down and he played nickel when Keontae Scott was out, and he rushed the quarterback, and he did a lot of great things with that stuff too. Like there were ways that he was able to impact the game. But I think it's just taking that next step physically of just getting thicker and filling out and getting stronger. And I'm super excited to see what Bryce Fitzgerald looks like, come August, September, and what the frame and how much he's filled out because the ball skills are extraordinary. And if he can kind of start pairing that with a body that's capable of handling kind of like the down to down stuff required of the safety or a nickel, um, I mean, I think the sky's the limit for him.
Last year they played four essentially safety nickels, right? And again, injuries kind of changed the dynamic of snap counts with Keontae Scott getting hurt for a little bit at the end of the season. Would you expect Miami to play four safeties again this year? Do you think it'll be three? If you do think four, who would you project to be the fourth?
I think there's going to be four that are going to probably get into the mix. Like, look, I mean, Dylan Day started getting some praise from Corey Heatherman at the back end of the season, and he almost made a game-changing play in the Fiesta Bowl if he comes down with that ball that could have been picked off and potentially returned. So there's something with Dylan Day that's kind of coming to be, and is he someone that we're maybe not factoring enough into whether it be
Yeah.
the nickel conversation or even just on the back end, and then JJ Dunnigan is someone that I'm excited about just because the frame is so impressive. Like
Yeah.
he looks like how Jacoby Thomas probably looked like 2 or 3 years ago, and maybe even more so. Like he's probably longer and bigger. Like Jacoby Thomas was not a top end recruit. He signed with Middle Tennessee. JJ Dunnigan was a top 100 player nationally and has a super impressive frame and got to Miami really early before that Cotton Bowl prep. So I think kind of laid the foundation for him too. So if JJ Dunnigan can add the mass and if it translates onto the field the way that some people might think, like he's another one that you could probably depend on and you can use Omar Thornton and Bryce Fitzgerald in other ways too. And also getting a lot of good feedback on Zechariah Poyser, both as just like from a
Yeah.
leadership standpoint, as far as like who's going to step up. Because that was one of the questions I had. Like, how do you feel? Like, who do you feel like are the guys that can step up with so many leaders leaving? Zechariah Poyser was one of the first names that came up, and then just him in another year in this Corey Heatherman system. I think he can just be a solid, steady presence for Miami on the back end.
To me, this is a CFP level group and a
Yep.
national
Yes.
championship
Same.
level group.
Agree.
All right, final thoughts. Just looking at the roster from a 30,000-foot view, right? And look, anyone who listens to this podcast knows like I'm big on four position groups in particular: quarterback, O line, D line, corner. Quarterback, the David Lake algorithm. Quarterback is elite. Offensive line, to me, the way I would assess offensive line, I think it has talent, but it has to come together. We'll see how it all gels together by game one and then even through that first month of the season. But I think it's good. Like I think the offensive line's in a good spot. Defensive line, very good. Cornerback to me is elite for the college level. And look, I think it's fair to say this, Gabby. Like if we went back to last year and think about how we felt about things last year, which do you think was like a bigger unknown or question mark at the same stage? Carson Beck this time last year with his injury stuff and how's he going to bounce back type of stuff, or where this offensive line is at right now? Which to you is like the bigger question mark?
I would probably say Carson Beck,
I
just
would
because
too.
of the season that he was coming off of and the injury.
Right.
And so to me, I think Carson Beck last year.
Right. So last year at this time, like quarterback would have been the big question mark to me
Right.
of those four position groups. Also, like corner, we thought it was going to work out, but we didn't really know. Um, and look, I do think, and I think it's fair to also recognize, like, what if everything doesn't go rosy and perfect? If this team doesn't make the college football playoff, to me, it would be a massive disappointment.
Ooh, yeah.
And what would that look like if that did happen? To me, it's like the offensive line just like doesn't come together for whatever reason. Like outside of like obvious things like injuries, like your quarterback
Mhm.
gets hurt or whatever. But like to me, it would look like the offensive line just doesn't come together. Look, if we're being honest, like we trust this regime, right? We trust this regime. But two new offensive tackles and a new starting center, that's typically for everyone else around the country, that's some risky stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's fair to recognize that situation as being something you got to monitor. Defensively, to me, it would look like, you know, maybe Miami is just not able to stop the run like they were in 2025. Because I do think Ruben Bain and Mesidor played a huge role in that run defense. Are these defensive ends as reliable and dependable at helping set the edge and stop the run? We'll see, right? So to me, those would be the two question marks as to like what could potentially hold this team back from a very disappointing season of not being able to get into the CFP. But like ultimately, can this team make another run at a natty? I think so. And will it? You know, it depends on a lot of things. But to me, this is a national championship level roster. And now it's up to the coaches to kind of put it all together and get the most out of this group.
I'm with you. This is a title contender on paper and considering the production and everything else that's kind of going along with it. So I think it's definitely going to come down to how good this offensive line is. If the offensive line is just solid, like I don't think that this is, I don't think that this team's gonna like this. At least this offense is gonna struggle much, unless just something just doesn't click for whatever reason that is. But I don't anticipate that being the case. And look, this is going to be a fun team to watch, man. I think again, going into spring last year, there were a lot of questions because it's like, oh, we're not going to see the quarterback. I think we're going to see this team like
Yeah.
go from the jump, and I think that this offense is going to have even more time to gel. I think you're going to have a whole off season of new creative ways to get Malachi Tony the football. I think you have more support for Malachi Tony, who was electric as the focus of the passing
Yeah.
game when everyone in the world knew it. So I think that there's just so much potential with this team. I expect nothing short of a college football playoff appearance. I think that this is a team that should handle business in the ACC. I think it's time for Miami to kind of take that step as a program. Not that, I mean, the college football playoff obviously matters more, but I do think it's time for
They should
Miami
win it.
kind of, yeah, to
It's
win the
enough.
conference. Yeah, exactly. I think it's just gotten to that point where it's like, all right, there's no excuse anymore to not win the ACC and to not
Yeah.
dominate your ACC opponents and handle business and get to Charlotte and win that game and move on. Um, and this is a team that learned how to win. Like I think that there's something to just the
Hmm.
fact that this team learned. A lot of people on this team knows what it takes to win a football game now, and I think that that's a massive step that this program needed to take is learning what it takes to win big games and prepare for big games and understand how to navigate a season and the importance of staying on track and focused on every game and the potential for slip ups and what it could cost you and what it could mean and how those slip ups could have potentially set back the ceiling of what this team, which was a national title contender. So I think that there's a lot that happened in 2025 that's going to translate to 2026, and you factor in all the pieces that Miami's added, and truly, I really feel like there is borderline limitless potential with this team. It's just a matter of it all coming together.
Yeah, Miami's fatal flaw in 2025 was their lack of explosiveness on offense. They still got to the Natty. They still played that game in a manner in which they could have won the game. Um, but you have to be explosive. You have to have that explosive potential to go win a national championship. And Miami addressed that in a big way this offseason with the talent acquisition moves it made personnel wise. And again, I think this schedule is very, very friendly. And so Miami should be relatively fresh and clicking, assuming they handle business in the regular season and get to the postseason as they should. So it'll be a fun year. This is the roster. Again, this is it. And I think Miami hit a home run in terms of like, okay, you get one portal window to have your roster set for the next 12 months. I like what they did. I think they have answers if things don't work out. Everyone's going to have their little holes or flaws around the country, but I think Miami is in a good spot roster wise. Probably, for being honest, like a top five roster in the sport right now,
Hmm.
easily, maybe even higher. But it's going to be a fun year. Appreciate everyone for listening. Um, spring football's probably a month away or so now.
Month and a
Probably
half away.
yeah, a month and a half. So we'll have plenty to talk about with like high school recruiting getting going. Where who are the key players Miami's going to be chasing in their high school class, and plenty of coaching news too to dive into here in the month of February. So appreciate everyone for listening. Until next time, take care.